the world the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing.
Hello and welcome to Focus on the Liturgy. I'm Todd Williamson from the Office for Divine Worship with the Archdiocese of Chicago.
And I'm Timothy Johnston from St. Thomas the Apostle in Hyde Park.
Timothy, Merry Christmas again.
Merry Christmas again.
We
yes.
are in the midst of the Christmas season, the great season of Epiphany, of Revelation. We did a podcast earlier on the theology of the season. And in this podcast, we're going to talk about the symbols and the music of the season, because they too help us
yes.
in this season of revelation, of Christ being revealed in many different ways, and being many of the facets of Christ
right.
are revealed in this season. Right before we started, we talked about the antiphon for evening prayer on Epiphany, how the antiphon for the Magnificat on Epiphany, it does talk about the Magi, but not just the Magi. It talks about the revelation of with the Magi. It talks about the revelation of the wedding feast at Cana. Yep. And it talks about the revelation of the baptism of the Lord. And so...
right, and that it reminds us, like that antiphon, when we look at it, reminds us of the ancient history of how Epiphany historically was celebrated. It's shifted over the years, because like we have now, it wasn't the same story. In the Eastern churches, they rotated the Epiphany stories with those three because it was about revelation,
right.
about Epiphany in that sense. And so that's why the antiphon still kind of helps remind us of that. But in our current liturgical calendar, you'll notice that Epiphany, we'll have Epiphany, baptism of the Lord, and then usually the wedding feast at Cana is that second Sunday in ordinary time.
Right. Because in all of it, an aspect of Christ is being revealed, right? Yeah. He is the Son of God. He is the Savior of the world. He is the one who, which, if you think about it, go back to the very beginning of the season with Isaiah, the Wonder Counselor, Prince of Peace, Mighty yes. God, right? All these different aspects of Christ.
Well, I was just thinking, which we don't usually sing this during Christmas, songs of thankfulness and praise. Let me find it here, because that, if we look at it, where are you? It's it talks about all three of those revelations. So it does actually, it shows up in the Epiphany section in this hymnal. It doesn't in all hymnals. But it manifests at Jordan stream, prophet, priest, and king supreme, and at Cana wedding guest, in your Godhead manifest. Manifest in power divine, changing water into wine. Then the third verse, manifest in making whole palsied limbs and fainting souls. So this even goes on to sort of how Jesus is revealed in the healing stories, which we'll start to hear in ordinary time, sort of his daily ministry.
It's John the Baptist. Who are you?
Yeah.
And Jesus says, go back and tell John that the blind see, that the lame
yes.
walk, right? All right. So
yep.
in this podcast, we want to continue that conversation, but by looking at how the symbols of the season and the music of the season help to help us to see this manifestation, this epiphany of who Christ is, right? Well, if we're going to talk about the symbols of the season, you got to start with light. Right?
Yes.
Because the Vigil Mass, again, go back to the opening collect for the Vigil of Christmas. May the splendor of your majesty shed its light upon our hearts. Yeah. And so how light is such an image for this season. You know, pull out all the candles in your parish, right? Candles all over the inside of the church. And candles are such a sign, a symbol of Christmas.
Right, and we hear, and as we said in our previous show, we hear those imagery in the scriptures as well. We also know that at homes, so we've had the Advent wreath, which has been lighting in this darkness. And a lot of families then, or churches, will put sort of the Christ candle as a tradition in our devotional tradition in the center of that when Christmas comes, and keep that lit throughout this time. Again, to show that the brightness of Christ is in the world. But even like if we look at
Christmas lights.
Christmas lights, yeah, we decorate our homes outside.
Bathe our homes in light, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah, my dad he doesn't anymore, but used to just cover the whole property with lots of light.
The light has come into the darkness.
The light has come into but even in maybe older times, I don't know when this tradition, some people still do this, but putting lights in your windowsill, like windows in the house. Like I had an aunt who would do that, but there's a tradition around that of calling the stranger or the pilgrim, the journeyer, that's the journey person,
Yeah.
I should say, as if like Mary and Joseph, so like la posada, I can't say
Posada.
it. Thank you, I can't ever say it. That's one of those traditions too,
Yeah.
like putting the light so that you are drawing them into a safe place, into a warm place. It was a sign to let people know this was a Christian home in some places, that this was a safe space, depending on the time of history. So yeah, light is used
Oh my God!
everywhere.
Look at the Christmas tree. The Christmas tree is a Christian symbol. It's even though secularism has taken it over,
Right.
it's a Christmas. It's a symbol of Christ,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I just love this image. You know, this tree that is covered in lights. And traditionally, what's at the bottom of the tree? What's under the tree traditionally? Usually it's like a village scene,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
mean, traditionally. I remember my grandparents
Yeah.
would put like a village scene under the tree. And then what's on top of the tree?
An angel.
The
yeah.
angel usually.
Or a star.
Right? Or a
Like an
star.
angel or star, yeah, both.
And the tree connects heaven and earth.
Yeah, yeah.
And who connects heaven and earth? Christ.
Yeah.
Who is revealed as the connector between heaven and earth? Christ.
Christ.
The Christmas tree is a symbol of Christ.
And I think there's a connection and a reminder of that from 2 shows ago when we talked a little bit about the Jesse tree. Sort
Yes.
of the from the root of Jesse, from Jesse himself, the line comes the Christ. And so again, kind of connected, we have this evergreen tree that is a symbol of life, which we'll talk more about
Yes.
greenery. But like that's an important reminder for all of us of what is happening.
Yeah.
here.
That is kind of like the premier symbol of Christmas, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I say, fill the church with lights, fill your home with lights and candles or electric candles or whatever, but the light has come into the darkness and the darkness cannot overcome it.
It cannot,
Right?
yeah.
And then you just mentioned it, greenery, another profound Christmas symbol.
Right.
You said it, it's the evergreen, it's the green that will not die, that does not die.
Yeah, like that's it's funny because I drive down Lakeshore pretty much every morning, and right there in Lincoln Park by the zoo there are some greens that are deciduous trees,
Right.
but they are not evergreens. They are part of the deciduous family that lose their needles every year. They turn brown and lose their needles. So and I think about this often as I'm driving by, like how different in our natural world the signs and the symbols communicate. And so yeah, we have evergreens like spruce trees and those
Firs and
particular
yes.
ones that remain green even in the bleak winter. They show us a sign of life. I also think about, this is not so much greenery, but it is in the sense of like the bigger picture of creation. When I was growing up, there was a song, I don't know if anybody sings it anymore, but The Snow Lay on the Ground, and then Violet in the Snow, which is an old song that Carrie Landry wrote. But I remember in the hymnal, the kids' hymnal that we had in my school, on that page where Violet in the Snow was, there was a drawing of a violet popping out of the snow. And it's a reminder of life that has come in this darkness, that has
Yeah.
come in the stillness, in the sort of what we see as death around us. But we have to remember that snow is insulating, and there is life happening. And so the evergreen, we decorate our homes with the tree.
And not just in tree, but
wreaths.
in wreaths, swags that hang on the
yeah.
door. Oh my gosh, yeah.
And we've seen them since Thanksgiving this year. But yeah,
Right.
But they are symbolically reminding us that life continues and has been given.
I hope that parishes use, and I hope families or individuals use the blessing of the Christmas tree. Right,
Yeah.
which is so in the Book of Blessings there's the blessing of a Christmas tree, and the light is a profound and pivotal symbol in that blessing. The lights of the tree are off at the beginning of the blessing. And after the prayer of blessing, that's when the lights are to be put on on the tree, right? Which is just, so there's the blessing of a tree that you can find in the Book of Blessings. You can find it in Catholic household blessings and prayers from the USCCB. But what a great tradition to bless the Christmas tree. One of the primary symbols.
It is one of the primary symbols. And just for our listeners, for that last the resource you mentioned, that's kind of a compilation of many blessings from the Book of Blessings, because not all of our homes are going to buy this ritual book. But this one is designed for moms and dads to
lead,
pray and to lead,
to preside,
to be the primary leader of prayer in their home.
Yes.
And so if you don't have one, you need to buy it.
It's a great resource, right? So the blessing of the Christmas tree, primary, an important symbol of Christmas. The creche scene. How many creche scenes, how many families, how many churches, how many parishes? Everyone has a creche. It's a devotional. It's not required. There's nothing that says that a church has to have a manger scene. And I have to just put a shout out here. St. Francis is the originator of the creche. He was the one that put together a living, if you will, scene of the baby in the manger.
Christmas at Greccio, right? Was it Greccio?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And so images, which is, again, it reminder that, that Christ came into our world. He came into, our lives. The earthiness of the manger, people will talk about, right? The humus of the manger.
Like
a dirt floor, and oh my goodness.
I mean, I just heard somebody recently say, like, imagine, well, it was actually we did an Advent retreat in our parish, and the presenter was talking about images of the Nativity as reflection points, and one of the images, and I cannot remember what it was from, but shows Mary, like he showed the progression of Mary from what childbirth probably was, like painful. They were in a messy stall. They were, whatever.
Animals and animal waste.
And anybody that has had a child will know the struggles of that, to a sanitized version that we sort of have now, where Mary's just perfectly, and she's already swaddled, and they're both kneeling in adoration, which it reminds us of something, but we also can't forget, it was messy. There probably were midwives that were called in to help. And
our lives are messy.
But the beauty of it is, it shows us that in his divinity, God takes on our full humanity.
Yes. That's the beauty, and that's the message of the manger scene, of a creche scene.
Yeah, like God did not say, well, I'm better than the rest of you. Like, I'm going to sanitize all of this for myself and just magically appear.
The king of all creation, the king of the universe, came to us in an animal's quarters.
And in the way that all of us came into the world.
Yeah, yes, the way that all of us came into the world. And similarly, I hope that parishes and that families make use of the blessing of a creche scene.
Yeah.
Because again, in the Book of Blessings, we are a liturgical people. Everything is marked with liturgy. And so in the Book of Blessings and in Catholic household blessings and prayers, for families to use, there's a blessing of a creche scene. What a beautiful way to mark the Christmas season.
And especially if as a family you have been celebrating with the Advent wreath, this is an easy and natural transition from that devotional prayer into these types of blessings, to make the connection to what you've been doing around the Advent wreath and sort of this preparation now then to, with your children, even if you're single, or if you're husband and wife, you don't have to have children to do this. You gather as a family, as a community of faith, to do that, and it's a beautiful witness not only for yourselves but for the life of the world.
Yep. We were talking earlier about that connection. Christ is the connection between heaven and earth. I know many people, my sisters, will put the creche scene under the tree at Christmas. Right?
That's what we always did.
Right. There's the connector, right?
Yep.
There's the symbol. He does connect heaven with the angel or the star, and the lowly manger earth.
It's funny you said that, because I was just on the phone with my mom the other day, and I grew up in a house where we waited to put up our Christmas stuff until pretty close to Christmas. And my niece, my oldest niece, was there helping. And I don't know if I've shared with the audience, but my mom has dementia, so we've been on that journey for a while. So my niece is there helping. I'm on the phone with them as they're putting up all of this. And my niece didn't know our tradition in my home of putting the creche right under the tree. So she had set it up just a little off to the side, which threw my mom off. She's like, well, that's not where, like, she remembered enough, like, that's not where that goes, that's not where that goes. And I said, oh, you need to move it. You need to move it back, like,
under the tree.
That's a tradition, and that's but it just reminded me, like, those little things, as I was a kid even, are important. But I didn't know that's what my parents were doing, if that makes, like, I'm not sure they knew what they were doing, but they passed on these traditions because it was important to them, and they do have meaning.
Yes, they do.
And so all of our families have stories like that that we can share.
Yep, exactly. And so all of these symbols, they help to reveal to us who Christ is, what he came to do. It's interesting, made mention of this before the show, Timothy, that Sing to the Lord, the document on liturgical music that came from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, USCCB, Sing to the Lord calls music a symbol in the liturgy. And the music that we sing during this season helps to reveal who Christ is. I should say the music that we sing in liturgy.
In liturgy,
The liturgical Christmas music, which is different than the secular. Not to bash, I love secular Christmas music, but we're talking about what we sing in the liturgy during this Christmas season. They reveal who Christ is.
Well, and remember, like anything that we sing, especially at Christmas or Easter, like those major feasts, but any song that we sing should have beauty and a theological reality, like substance, that's the word I'm looking for, to it, because what we put on our lips helps shape what we believe, and the way that it reinforces what we believe.
And it expresses what we believe.
Exactly. So I think before we dive into that, though, it might be helpful to define or to have a nuance about what we mean by symbol in the church.
Sure.
Because I think in the secular world, sometimes we use symbol as something fleeting or maybe not real. Or
nice way to say it. No, I think you're right.
I don't know and so I may not explain this right, because when I was teaching high school, I was always jumbling this, but symbols for us they're real. Like, they point to something beyond themselves that is very real. So like the waters of baptism, they're not just a sign of just, we're pouring water to think about baptism, but what's happening in that water as a symbol is that child dies in reality with Christ and is made anew.
Yes.
And I don't, that's hard for us to understand, because it is a metaphysical sort of understanding in the philosophical way. But it isn't just play acting. Sometimes that's the best way.
Pretending,
like, well, we'll do this and it happens, but but no, it's real. So for us, these symbols point us to the deep reality of what God has revealed to us in the person of Christ, in the way that and so that's why the liturgy is filled with these symbols, because everything points to us. Or points to that reality, or deepens us into that reality. So it's not something false. That's important to know. Like, same with mystery. Like, when we hear mystery out there in the secular world, it's
a puzzle to be solved.
Yeah, and that's not what we believe in the church. Like, it's sacraments or mysteries. There's something we can't explain, and we don't need to necessarily explain, but we can dive deeper and deeper into them. They draw us into, like, the mystery of the Trinity. In that sense.
And music does that.
Right.
What we sing does that.
Right. So
that was good.
And that's one of the reasons I want to bring that up, because sometimes I think when we're sitting in the pews, and maybe this is my bias as a musician and also a cantor, and people aren't singing, I think they
don't get it.
They don't get it.
They don't base it.
It's
not entertainment.
It's not entertainment, and it's not just the words, but it is also the music. It's the two of those wedded together, but also sometimes in the hearing of music. So, our organist will do preludes, and I know that happens in many parishes. And sometimes that's a way of entering into a very intimate way of praying. by hearing that. But then in singing, of course, so one of my favorites and maybe one of your favorites is O Come All Ye Faithful.
Yes.
And I know most parishes I've lived in or been part of
That
throughout
is
my
the
life.
Christmas, that's the opening Christmas
Opening
hymn.
song. So O Come All Ye Faithful, joyful and triumphant. Well, the faithful are us. And are we, it's declarative, are we coming? O come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. O come ye to Bethlehem. And in this sense, it's not we're all traveling to the physical Bethlehem, but it is the idea of coming to this scene, not just in history, but this revelation.
Yeah,
Like,
least of which in history. It's come
Right.
to this revelation, exactly.
Like, come and adore, because that's what we're going to sing. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him. Christ the Lord. And it's declarative in that sense, like, come adore, this is Christ.
Yeah.
You know, in the
It's an
sense-
imperative.
Yeah.
It's not a suggestion.
Right, like it isn't like, okay, this is a nice little ditty that we're going to sing, but again, reminding, okay, I'm the faithful, I'm coming, God of God. Now, these are very theological statements.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Like,
Yes.
very profound theological statements. Again, some of these things come out of controversies in the early church, where they were trying to define the
yeah.
divinity and the humanity. Like,
Articulate what we say we believe.
and so we continue to reinforce that because they were such controversies in parts of the early church and divisive in some ways in the early church. And the councils that came after those solidified those. So this second verse, God of God, light of light, so you can hear some of that, you know, in the creed. He comes forth from the virgin's womb. That's an important theological statement, that he comes from the virgin's womb, not Mary's womb, not some random womb, like the virgin,
Yeah.
because that was an argument.
That was a point of contention.
Like, how can a virgin have a child? Well, she did. And that's part of the mystery.
Through the Holy Spirit.
Through the Holy Spirit, right? Our very God begotten, not created. Again, that's a theological, creedal statement that we profess when we sing this song. Our very God begotten. We hear that in the creed, right? When we profess
Yes.
it, not created. And then the third verse is a little bit more, not as theological, but it has some imagery that we're familiar with. Sing, choirs of angels, sing in exultation. Sing, all ye citizens of heaven above. The theological thing here is that it isn't just here on earth who are singing, but it is all
It's
creation.
the connection, right? It's the connection between heaven and earth that
Yeah.
is Christ.
And so the angels and all the citizens of heaven are singing glory to God in the highest, which is how that ends. In our fourth verse, yea, Lord, we greet thee, born this happy morning. Jesus, to thee be all glory given, word of the Father, John's Gospel, now in flesh appearing. The Word
In flesh.
has been incarnate, right? And so
And
taking that
and has
imagery
dwelt among us.
and has dwelt among us. So
So
Yeah.
listeners, think of that when you're singing
Right, and that's-
that during this
and sing it.
Christmas season. And sing it.
and
Yeah,
sing
exactly.
it because, like, as I said, like,
It's a profession.
part
It's
of that's a
what we believe.
profession of faith. Joy to the World, which I should have marked these better, it has similar kinds of things in it. And I should have brought, Dolores Duffner has a text that
Can be sung to that tune?
that can be sung to this that is a little bit more like O Come All Ye Faithful, where it's taking some creedal statements and making them much more pertinent than this. But again, Joy to the World, which is familiar
Oh my gosh,
and,
yes.
and probably a favorite for many. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. So naming that. Let earth receive her King, let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. So again, all of creation is singing because of what we've received. This gift.
All of creation
of
praises.
God's love.
All of creation recognizes this revelation.
Yeah.
All of creation recognizes this manifestation.
Right, because in one of the carols, it talks about the cattle and the ox
Lowing,
bowing,
yep.
lowing, like, lowering themselves
What
in
child is this?
adoration. Yeah, thank you. I'm terrible at, what child is this? But that's another one of those songs where in our Catholic hymnals, we rarely have all the verses.
Yeah.
I was going to look and see if they were all in here, because one of the verses in What Child Is This?
You're going into something that I absolutely love, and that we
Yeah.
don't
Because-
we aren't often aware. Not many Catholics are aware of it.
Yeah,
so
'cause
this is the hymn. What child is this? And its text. Its text is
like the
terribly profound.
And I don't know if I have the text. It's not even in this one. Oh, wait, here. Because it's an Epiphany song ultimately, but we often sing it on Christmas Day. But it's in the Epiphany section. Let's see if they put the verses in here. They did not. So most of our Catholic hymnals only put the first three verses in, which are the nice verses. What child is this who laid to rest on Mary's lap is sleeping, whose angels greet with anthems sweet? Why lie he in such mean estate? Now that's, I always, we have to think about what mean estate means here, because that's not language we use in our current context. Mean estate is not such great. So he's in a manger, he's with ox and ass and various other things. But we can also think, who is he lying? Like the immigrants who are at the border are lying in mean estate with our Christ right now.
Oh my gosh.
The poor on our streets here in Chicago are lying in mean estate with the Christ child. Like he has come into the world as they are living.
Yeah.
And so they're feeding, good Christians fear and sinners hear. Again, that's not niceties. Like in that's reality. The silent word is pleading. Well, he's pleading
for us.
For us. So bring him incense, gold and myrrh, come peasant king to own him, the King of kings salvation brings. But the fourth verse, which I cannot quote for you even, but yeah.
Nail and spear shall pierce him through, the cross he bore for me, for you.
Right.
That's a Christmas, that's a verse of a Christmas hymn, and how nail and spear shall pierce him through, the cross he bore.
It's the completion of the story.
Yes. It's Easter in Christmas.
Right. None of these feasts are separated. They cannot be. And that's why I'm always confused why our Catholic hymnals, I don't know if we're just afraid of that imagery, but if you look, I mean, again, in the Lutheran, the Presbyterian, most of the times you'll find sometimes for any of our hymns, and especially like Christmas or Easter hymns, you'll find some additional verses that are very striking and sometimes very challenging. Hymnal 1982, which is the Episcopal hymnal, there's a completion of that narrative. So in our parish at St. Thomas, we'll sing all those verses. I pull it out of the Lutheran hymnal just because to add that verse. Theologically, it's the same.
Yes.
But I want to make sure we include that verse because it's important that on this Christmas feast we don't forget the long view here. Why did God come into the world?
Yes.
It isn't just to be
the
a
full
nice
story.
baby.
The full story.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, there's and you probably have your favorite Christmas.
Similarly, We Three Kings has a verse that we rarely sing, but is terribly theologically important and profound.
Let's see here if that's in here. Which one are you thinking of?
The myrrh gathering in the...
Myrrh is mine, is bitter perfume.
Yes.
Breathes a life of gathering gloom, sorrowing, sighing, bleeding, dying, sealed in the
cold stone tomb.
I can't,
sealed in a
stone
cold tomb.
You're right, we don't...
Read that again.
That
verse.
So this is verse 4.
This is a Christmas song.
So the verse before this was frankincense. And gold, I think, was in that verse as well. So the fourth verse, myrrh is mine, its bitter perfume, breathes a life of gathering gloom, sorrowing, sighing, bleeding, dying, sealed in the stone-cold tomb.
Easter. It's Easter in the Christmas. The Paschal Mystery, Christ cannot be separated, right? We don't separate his birth from his passion, death, and resurrection. We don't pretend that we don't know the rest of the story about this babe, right? This cute little babe in the sanitized little creche scenes. He through his death, through his complete self-offering, which he calls us to in every liturgy of the church, to offer ourselves like him.
Exactly. Well, like each of these three gifts in the story of the Magi, we can theologize about them to reveal a part of the Paschal mystery for each of us. So that second verse, born a king in Bethlehem's plain, gold I bring to crown him again, king forever. So the gold, a sign of his kingship, a sign of authority or power, the wealth, not in the sense of what we would think of that of being, because the narrative is different than just King Herod acquiring all this wealth or me acquiring all this wealth, but the wealth of God's love and mercy, and that he will rule with righteousness and justice in that sense. Then that third verse, frankincense to offer have I, and we use frankincense and myrrh, I should say, both in incense. So on this on the actual Christmas day, I always use frankincense and myrrh in our in our
In the
thurible
incense,
for
yeah.
that day. I don't know if people know that, but making those connections. But frankincense to offer have I, incense owns a deity nigh, prayer and praises gladly raising, Psalm 141, worshiping God on high. So Psalm 141 is let our prayers rise
Right,
like incense. So
right.
that alludes a little bit to that imagery. So we bring incense for his priestly ministry in the sense of what he does, what we do. Each of these, we could kind of say in some ways, fits into that baptismal
Yeah.
imagery, or we could push it in there theologically if we wanted to nudge it in there.
Oh my God. Now, all of these, yes, about revealing the Christ, revealing Jesus, revealing the beloved Son, revealing the Savior, all of that. But there are also songs that reveal, how can I say that? That reveal what we are to be. Good King Wenceslas.
Oh, and
I love that hymn. But it's not a pretty picture. Do you have it there?
It's not in our hymnals usually.
Really?
I don't think so, because it's
He looked down on the feast of Stephen,
yeah.
on a poor beggar, right? And helps the poor beggar. A revelation.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we're called. We're called to go and to search out the other. We're called to give of ourselves for the benefit of another. We're called to be Christ.
Yeah.
And in that, Wenceslas is Christ, an act of charity, an act of mercy. We're going into the Jubilee year, and that's Christmas song that is, again, it's not a pretty scene that it paints, but that's what we're called. We're called to give of ourselves to the least, to the last, to the lost.
I will suggest another podcast, because Todd and I talked about this, but there's a podcast you can find called Hark. Mm-hmm. And that podcast sort of goes through, and it's got 4 different seasons, but it goes through different either Advent and Christmas songs during the Advent season to kind of prepare us for. And one of the episodes they do is on Good King Wenceslas.
Really?
And,
I gotta listen to that.
I don't remember which season it's in. It's not in the current season, but they break it open in a very beautiful theological way. So I would invite our listeners to maybe find that on your, whatever you use for podcast.
Yeah.
But it's called Hark, like Hark the Herald.
Right.
And kind of find out a little bit more about that
Oh my
particular
gosh.
one. But sing it also on the Feast of Stephen, the
Yes,
26th. Like
right.
open it up and
The day after.
whether individually or as a family, sing with it.
Nice,
So.
nice. Timothy, as we come to a close here, we're talking about in both of these Christmas podcasts, this is a season of revelation, a season of Epiphany. That being said, what is your favorite Christmas hymn? Do you have one?
Boy, it changes. I feel like
It's as it should, right? Based on where you are, who we are each year, what we've been through in the last year.
I think liturgically it probably leans most towards O Come All Ye Faithful because of what it's doing there. I think outside, not secular music, but in terms of, which is still maybe a liturgical song, and I've talked about this song on the podcast before, but it's Bernadette Farrell's Peace Child. I think
Yes.
Bernadette Farrell, or is it Barbara Bridge? I always forget. It's one. I think it's Bernadette. It's a more modern song. We don't really use it in Christmas very often, unless because it's not as nice as these beautiful carols, or it was well known. But it does talk about the coming of Christ in the midst of darkness, in the midst of war and violence and bombing, and sort of what does this child of peace, the peace of Christ, which we've talked about on the show before, what does this child bring to us in the midst of all of this? He brings peace.
Yeah.
And for us to recognize what has been revealed in that. And so I use that, I guess, more in my private prayer, my devotional prayer, as a way of reflecting on the mystery. And certainly in our current context of the world where there is still very much war. and
Where the
violence.
darkness does threaten to overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. So for our listeners, the message is pay attention to the symbols of this season. They are not just nice images. They reveal something about what we believe in Christmas and about Christ.
Yes.
Pay attention to the music that you are singing, and you should be singing at Mass.
Yes.
Pay attention to the words that you sing in these sung prayers. They help to reveal Christ as well.
Yeah.
Right? Timothy, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas
to our
to you.
listeners, Merry Christmas. Thank you for listening. This has been Focus on the Liturgy.
God bless everyone.
God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise.